So I'm going to talk a little bit about Moscovy Commotion, which is a poetry collection of some 30 or so poems, which I wrote in 2013 during my time in Moscow. There may be a lot of pauses in this video, just because it's been a while since I was in Moscow, and I'll have to think a bit about the memories and trying to recall things. I wrote this under the name Simon Clifton because that was the pen name that I was using at the time. And I guess I was struggling a bit with having a full-time working life, a career, and was worried about the potential clash of beliefs about my capabilities in that career if people found out that I was a poet. So I never really told anyone at work that I was a poet. I think I'm over all that now because I tend to use my original surname now. This was never published, although it has been published like all of my poetry on my website. I did make it into a formatted book ready to print, but never actually got around to printing it. Never quite had the time and the money at the same occasion. So I did lots of drawings for this poetry collection, which may not appear in the book I'm hoping to publish, which is my complete works, but I'm sure I'll make those drawings available on my own website, maybe in other places too. They were sketches, really, pen and ink sketches of different locations, churches, bridges, two ornate glasses with metal shrouds and handles that we were given on the train when we ordered coffee. That was the train St. Petersburg. It's a sketch of the library and the statue outside. Yeah, various sketches, probably 10 or 15 sketches. Bolshoi Ballet with the fountain outside. And this process was part of my absorbing the city, taking everything in. It's part of the fusion of information to sketch what I was seeing. I was pretty much completely without money at that time. I'd been dating my girlfriend Yulia, who was from Moscow, and yeah, I had nothing in terms of finances, and I had been out of work for a little while trying to find consultancy work, and she had to go back to Moscow. I think her visa had run out or something happened, and anyway, so I had been running a company and not really been successful in generating sales, so I travelled over there on a business visa and stayed with her and her family at their flat, their apartment in the outskirts of Moscow, in Ljubljana, I think it was. We were quite romantic, quite intimate at that time, and I sort of saw Moscow through her eyes, I think. She sees things in a romantic ideal a lot of the time, and things being beautiful and seeking out found art and things of beauty and culture. So, there's a lot of her in this, I think. which you definitely get from one of the poems, I Left My Heart in Moscow. The thing with the business visa is you can only travel over there 2 times in a year, so it was 3 months over there and then 3 months back and 3 months over there again. During both of those stays I wrote these poems, I think. Or I may have written, no, I think I wrote them in 1 month actually. All of them in 1 month, yeah. So yeah, I was visiting trade shows and trying to drum up business, get some sales in terms of consulting, and met with a few potential clients and things like that. But there was a lot of time, I had a lot of time spare on my hands in between doing those things. So I would wander around the city and take in the sights and the atmosphere and the different places. But as I said, I had no money at all. We were living on her money basically, and I think she sold her car so that we could afford to live. And she was working, but yeah, it was interesting times. Well, I really found Moscow to be very romantic. Maybe that was just because we were in that relationship at the time, or maybe it just really is romantic, and I sort of managed to capture that. I think I'd rather think that that was true than that it was being absorbed in a relationship. But there's a lot about Moscow that's very kind of like Rachmaninoff's music, and sort of calm, romantic, yet sometimes tempestuous sort of atmosphere to the place. So I really enjoyed my time in Moscow. I'm not going to go into what each poem is about particularly. If it isn't clear and obvious, then if you want to make a comment or get in contact with me in some way, if you're interested particularly in one or other poems, I'll be happy to explain it to you. I really liked Gorky Park. I think I found a lot of peace there in Gorky Park. And you know, if you mention Moscow to people, they tend to think of it being quite harsh and overbearing Russian state and all this sort of stuff, and that's just nonsense. Or it was back then. Gorky Park was really, I think there was a horror movie called Gorky Park, which probably springs to mind when it's mentioned to people, but it's a very relaxing place, very nice. They've got a lot of different sort of curios in there for kids, and those are mentioned in the poem, I think. Large books, giant-sized books, and a space shuttle, and a real space shuttle. I wanted to mention the Broom Cafe because Last Dancing Broom Cafe is obviously about that. And the Broom Cafe was wonderful. I don't know what the actual name of it was in Russian, but that's what they told me the translation meant in English. And it's a very nice open cafe, really nice decor, sort of classic, sort of Soviet decor, I suppose. Quite nice food, unusual food. Gooseberry juice, for example. Where else would you find gooseberry juice? Just fresh gooseberry juice, but very strange, you know. And I couldn't speak Russian. I spoke a few phrases, but it was somewhere I was able to go and order without actually speaking in Russian. So I used to go there on my own sometimes, and there was an upstairs area which was really nice as well. But to the side, there was a little conservatory, and if you go and sit in the conservatory there, you very soon become aware of the fact that there are sparrows flying around inside the conservatory. I don't really recall whether it's because the windows were open or whether it was just the way they'd managed to pick holes in the covers to the conservatory. But yeah, sparrows flying around, and they would wait until a person left a table, and then they would fly in and pick up all the crumbs. And they would often come and sit on a chair at your table while you were eating as well. And it was just a wonderful place, mainly for that reason. Obviously, I talk about the dacha. A lot of people in Moscow have a holiday home, a wooden holiday chalet, fairly far out of the city, called the dacha. And they don't go there in the winter because it's snowed in usually. And when the first trip up there during this, when the spring arrives, requires a massive effort to dig out the snow, because the snow is often a metre or more high. So you would be absolutely snowed in if you'd stayed there over winter. I mean, you couldn't because it'd be so cold, but it's an interesting part of the culture and the lifestyle. For an eternal sleep, I'm just going to mention, because there was a museum, and I think it may have been in Red Square, near the mausoleum, the Lenin Mausoleum. Not entirely sure where it was now. Might have actually been near the KGB building. Yeah, I think it was actually. And in that museum, there are the bodies of two young people who are believed to be brother and sister. And they're sort of naturally mummified. And they've still got their weapons and their trinkets and beads and things, I think, that they were wearing. And they died in teenage years. And it just sort of captivated me a bit, which is why I wrote a poem about it. I don't know what they're called or what the museum is called, but I'm sure some of you out there know. I think that's all I wanted to say, really. Just very different culture, and not as different to England, where I'm from, as China was when I visited China. I definitely had culture shock in China, and I had mild culture shock because it's so different, and I saw quite severe culture shock in particularly one other person who I travelled out there with. But yeah, Moscow, not so different. But not much wealth out there. Cigarettes are cheap, just like China. And people like to help each other, they look after each other. They used to say that you could travel right across Moscow on a packet of cigarettes. The families know someone who does haircuts. They know one person who's got a car, and they all help each other with those things, and that's how they get through, And I suppose that's from the Soviet era and how they used to do things back then. And of course, the samovar comes out, the water heater, big gold ornate samovar when they have a meal at the weekends or in the evening, and friends are invited around, and the most amazing food is made and spread out on the table. Herring undercoat, which is wonderful. Sienike, which is beautiful. They eat buckwheat. I've forgotten the name for that in Russian. They have buckwheat for breakfast usually, and sienike with sour cream, which are like little pancakes. They look like scones, but they're little pancake things. Made with curd, which is really nice. Lots of fantastic food. And I introduced them to pickled eggs because they'd never seen pickled eggs before. And they pickle almost everything out there. They pickle mushrooms, the dry mushrooms on a heater. Because of the cold over the winter, they do make a lot of pickled veg, pickled cabbage, all sorts of things like that, which they eat. They make all that during the summer and then eat it over the winter. But yes, they were very interested in pickled eggs because they'd never thought of pickling eggs before. But, so yeah, I'd just like to say, if anyone from Russia is listening to this, watching this, then I'm really appreciative of the fact that they looked after me so well. I had nothing, but if there's one place in the world that I've been that this is true, it's Moscow. That if you have a good friend, and that's all you need. Yeah, they really looked after me, but again, this poetry collection is focused on place. By this stage in my writing, I had definitely got to the point where I was mainly writing, solely writing really about our relation, human beings' relation to locations, places. And that really is what this collection is about. That is all I write about now, really. And that developed over a long period of time, over many years. But by this stage, it's 2013, it was definitely solidified in my mind as what I was doing. So, yeah. So I may publish this collection on its own, independently of the other collections at some stage, but initially, if you're looking for a written copy of it, all the videos are here on YouTube, but if you, of me reading the poems, but if you want a written copy, then I'm planning for it to appear in Place, which is the name of my forthcoming complete works poetry collection. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.